Hey, boos and ghouls out there in YouTube land. This is Jen, and welcome to the first horror review of 2026. And we're starting out the year with a good one, and it's a zombie flick. So if you guys want to hear my thoughts on We Bury the Dead, and if it's something worth getting out of your grave for, or if they should have left this one dead and buried, if you want to hear my thoughts, stick around.
It has neither ear nor eyes, but it knows when all dies.
The zombie genre. You know, the zombie genre is a very beloved subgenre of horror. And I think one of the reasons why is because there are so many ways to do a zombie film. Of course, you can go the master's way, and by master, of course, I'm talking about George Romero, and do it a Night of the Living Dead style. Or you can take a more comedic route and do something like Shaun of the Dead or the underloved and underrated Fido, which is a banger, guys. And if you guys haven't checked that one out, I highly recommend it. Or you can give us gore hounds a run for their money with something like Train to Busan, where it's just action-packed and very tense and buckets of blood and gore, but has a heart to it despite all of the gore. You can go that way. Or you can go the introspective way, which again Romero did with his beloved Dawn of the Dead, or you can do it the way they did in 2024 with a movie called Die Alone, which I think is an underrated masterpiece, or a movie from 2016 called Here Alone. These movies are they're about zombies, but they're about other things as well. And We Bury the Dead definitely falls into the introspective category of zombie subgenres. This is a movie that I'm going to lay my cards on the table, guys. I really dug. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's a perfect film, but I will tell you guys, this is a film, it's definitely one of Jen's films where you gotta know your taste. I think some people are really going to dig this film, but I think just as many of you are going to be sitting here going, oh my god, this is a fucking snooze fest. I personally really loved it, and we'll get into the reasons why, but I can't acknowledge and understand why this zombie film won't be for everybody. We Bury the Dead is, like I said, it's a very introspective film, and it's an allegory, and really what it's about. It's a zombie film, but much like Anne Rice said about her beloved vampires, it's not really about the vampires, it's really about us. The same could apply to We Bury the Dead. It's a zombie film, sure, and it has some cool zombie aesthetics, and it definitely bows its head to the zombie genre, but where its heart is it's really an allegory about grief and about us. It's a mirror holding up to us about how people go through the stages of grief, the 5 stages of grief, and this one particularly, a big part of it in this film is the bargaining stage, how we will do anything to get it back. And the interesting thing about the 5 stages of grief, everyone associates it with death, and that's a big part of it, but really any kind of loss you can kind of really go in with the 5 stages of grief. It doesn't necessarily have to be death. It could be the loss of a relationship, it could be the loss of a job, anything that you loved that you lost, you can apply to the 5 stages of grief. And this, like I said, this movie really does that. That's one thing when I was watching the film really reminded me of. We're following a woman on her journey through the stages of grief, and it's done really beautifully. And this is a heavy film, and it's wrestling with some pretty high-minded concepts. But at the same time, it does sprinkle in a bit of black humor, and there are some cool actual scenes with zombies. But like I said, the thing that I find most horrific about this film is the zombies, but it's not where they're trying to be aggressive or going after people. The most heartbreaking part of this film is the humanity, and seeing these zombies were once us. They are us, and you can see that even though the lights aren't completely on, there's still somebody in there. Dare I say, there's a soul in these zombies, and there is a really great shot of where you see them, and they're just trying to figure out what the hell happened to them. And it's a very poignant and heartbreaking scene in this movie, and it just kind of made me just feel, like, it made me feel all the feels, if that makes sense, guys. This is from the director Zach Hilditch. I'm probably totally butchering his name, and I'm not too familiar with his filmography, but I have seen at least one of his other films, and that was a film he did for Netflix called Rattlesnake. And while I didn't love that movie, it wasn't a half bad movie for what it was. It was a fun afternoon popcorn kind of flick, kind of predictable in some areas, but there was something there. Despite not loving the film, there was something there. So what the hell is We Bury the Dead all about, other than the fact it's a zombie film? Well, this film is set in Australia. We are following Daisy Ridley playing the character of Ava, and she gets involved in this because the American military accidentally fucked up. Shocker, right, guys? And the island of Tasmania, they released something and killed a shitload of people, and some of the bodies are, as in the film calls it, are coming back online. But they're very slow, and at least at first they don't seem to be too aggressive. And how Daisy Ridley gets caught up in this is her husband happened to be on a business trip when this happened, and the military is calling for people like civilian recruits to come in and get the bodies, to, clean up the bodies. And she is thinking that she has heard that, some of these bodies are coming back to life. She is definitely very much kind of in her mind, she is bargaining with the powers that be, and she's thinking, okay, maybe I have this chance to get my husband back, and I'll take him. This is where the bargaining comes in. I'll take him anyway. If there's some spark of life in him, I'm going to try to find him and see if I can save him, and we can repair what we had. And she goes down there and gets on the body removal crew, and that is her plan. And you see, one of the things I really like about this film is we don't get the whole story. We get little flashbacks about their marriage and what kind of relationship they had. And another thing that I found extremely poignant about this movie is in one of these flashbacks is her husband and her are having a conversation, and she's trying to get pregnant and it's not going particularly well, and her husband, says, cheer up, we have all the time in the world. And I thought that was such a clever piece of writing, because even though we're doing a zombie film, we don't necessarily need a zombie apocalypse to really appreciate that sentiment of thinking we have all the time in the world. I mean, anything can happen, and you can be fine at midnight, and by 8 a.m. your world can completely change, just like it does in this movie. And that, thinking you have all the time in the world, it doesn't always work out that way. Life can throw you the oddest curveballs at the most inopportune times. And that was a really good reminder I think one of the reasons why this movie works for me is because what it is saying is to not take anything for granted, not to take a second of your life for granted, because we just don't know. There's no guarantee we have all the time in the world, and that you should love the people you love and be with the people you want to be with and do what you want to do, and as long as it's not hurting anybody and it's making you happy, fuck it, that's all that should matter. And that one little piece of dialogue made all of those little thoughts explode in Jen's little pea brain, and I thought that was really good commentary. And again, you don't necessarily need something as catastrophic as a zombie apocalypse to appreciate that sentiment. And she's going back in time, remembering this conversation. And she gets on this body removal crew, and she has this partner, and this partner, his name is Clay, and he is basically our comic relief. And he plays like he is very, not emotional about the bodies. He cracks jokes. He's very different from Ava. And you find out later in the movie that he has a story too, but he's very much roguish, and he's not taking this particularly seriously. And they form sort of a friendship while they're doing the body removal. and we go from there. But Ava the whole time is basically just trying to get to this resort where her husband's at to see if she's online. And where the problems for some people I feel that are going to be in this movie is the pacing. This is a very slow moving movie. Now we're going to a point. It's slow in the sense of audition. We're building up to something, but I can understand some moviegoers thinking, okay, we're really taking the long way around the barn with this one. And I can understand what you mean, but I would respectfully say we're building towards something. And where another one of the problems with this film, and it's not the film's fault, it's just its marketing is like, I've heard some people say this shouldn't really have been a horror movie, because yes, we do get some scenes with zombies, but the zombies, this isn't like your Romero's brain eating zombies or your 28 Days Later kind of zombies. Like I said, at the beginning, the one scene that really struck with me is when they find the bodies and they come back online, as the military calls it, is they have to immediately alert the military, and the military comes in and kills them because they don't know what to do. And the movie is very smart because, like I said, you see these people and they're not these zombies, and they're not aggressive. And you see, the first time you encounter a zombie through Ava's eyes, you see the light coming on and they recognize another human being, and they just kind of look like they're trying to puzzle it out, and they're not lunging, they're not trying to be aggressive or anything like that. And Clay goes and gets the military, and they come in and just literally boom, boom, boom. And it's just super heartbreaking how this scene was shot, because again, the lights aren't completely on, but there is some recognition, there is some humanity in these zombies, and you feel, or at least I felt the same way Ava did, that this is barbaric. And you're thinking, why can't we, like, take these zombies and put them somewhere where they won't pose a harm to the public, but why do we have to kill them? Why, especially at the beginning, they're not being aggressive. And like I said, some people are going to find this a bit slow. If you're going in for just your typical zombie fare, you're going to be a bit disappointed. And Ava devises a way to get to where her husband is, to where the beach resort is. And again, we get really good flashbacks of pieces of time with her and her husband. And as we're going through the film, we find out that all isn't right with their relationship. This is a couple who deeply loves each other, but because she's having infertility problems, that it's really starting to cause a drain on their marriage. And I like that. And we sometimes do, when people pass, sometimes we do only remember the good things about them. And this movie kind of confronts that while people have really great qualities, even the best of people have a dark side, have things about them that are less than perfect. And this movie really confronts that part of that narrative of human nature too. And it kind of, at the beginning of it, she's very much just remembering the good times with him. But toward the middle and ending of this movie, we realized this wasn't a perfect story. No story is a perfect love story, and they're no exception. And I like that. There's a realness to this movie. Where the trouble starts is when they manage to get to the resort where her husband was last seen. And this is completely deserted. Her and Clay kind of break the rules and just make a run for it on this very fast motorbike Clay finds. And that is one of the things I really appreciate about this movie is, again, there is a little bit of humor. And when Ava finally kind of lets Clay in on what her plan is, that she's going to try to find her husband, and she's like, will you, because he's like, I want to take the spin. This bike is fucking awesome. I'd love to take a spin. And she's like, well, you can if you take me to this place, if we can evade the military. And the actor is really good in this scene, and he looks at her and he goes, no, I can't do that because my country needs me. The dead need me. And he says it with such a serious face. And then he lets it hang there in the air for a minute. And a few seconds goes by and he goes, nah, I'm just fucking with you. Let's go. We're going to need some gas and food. And it's just a really cool scene. And like I said, this movie is kind of on the heavier side. So the few times there's a little bit of levity that appears in this film, it really works. And I liked that. I just like the way he did that. He's like, nah, I'm just fucking with you. And but he manages to sell that line line, like, the dead need me. And you're like, what the fuck, dude? It was just kind of, I really appreciated it. But they managed to get to where Ava needs to be. And when they get there, there's no military personnel sans this one dude. I guess he's kind of in charge of this one place, but he's by himself. And you feel immediately when this character is introduced, you feel like, okay, he might be a little bit off, but then you don't think too much of it, or at least I didn't, because the situation, he's by himself, and he says, what are you two doing here? And Ava proceeds to say, okay, we broke the rules and I'm trying to find my husband. And he goes, I understand what you're going through, but I'm gonna have to report you. And he separates Clay and Ava, and Clay manages to escape, and you wonder, is Clay, I kind of knew Clay would show back up, a minor spoiler here, but Clay does show back up later, but it kind of makes you think, did he just desert her to save his own skin? But they separate him, and Clay makes a run for it, and Ava sees that this military guy might have a little bit of humanity in him, and she tells her story about just wanting to find her husband. And he goes, okay, I'll give you safe passage to where you want to go. We'll go from there. And the movie, again, I think this works. Some people are going to say this is a little too much convenient. They make a bargain, and before he starts taking her to where she needs to go, he makes this pit stop, and you find out that it's this little bed and breakfast place. And they're sitting, and he's like, we're just going to get some supplies and some food. And then they're sitting at this table, and they're having dinner before they head out. And he starts talking. And about the same time where the movie is, little Jen was kind of thinking, okay, I know we're in a dire situation, and he is a military guy. Like, he's got the uniform, and he is actually a military guy. But she's all alone with a dude she doesn't know. And, you know, any kind of fuckery could happen. It's just part of the world we live in. And, like, you just kind of tingles are going off. And they're sitting there eating, and you just sort of get the stronger and stronger sense that there's something off with this guy. And then the camera, they're eating by candlelight, not to be romantic, but because the power's out. But all of a sudden you see a flicker on a photograph. And you see who's in the photograph is the military guy and his presumably wife. And then you realize, oh shit, there's something foul in the state of Denmark. And he's basically gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, because he explains that this was his wife's parents' bed and breakfast, and that his wife was with her parents, and he was on a mission when this whole thing happened. And you can see he has just gone completely nuts. And he goes, can I ask you a favor? I will take you there. And you don't hear what he asks, but she goes up to the bedroom and she puts on military guy's wife's clothes, including a necklace, her perfume, and she is also supposed to put on a wedding ring, but if she does, she'll have to take her own off. And you see she doesn't put on the ring. She puts on the rest of the clothes. And it's not a sexual thing. He comes into the room and he just wants to dance with her. And again, we're really doing the explorations of grief, because he's making her to look to his wife. And as they're dancing, he's telling her, I am so sorry I wasn't here when you needed me. I failed you. And it's really good. Like, it's fucking creepy as hell, and not everyone is gonna find this scene particularly creepy, but this scene for me really has a creepiness factor working on a lot of levels, because you know that this guy is unhinged, and you don't know what exactly he's gonna do. And this whole thing, like, you get being in the throes of grief, but having someone, a stranger, dress up in your dead wife's clothes and jewelry and perfume, you know, and dancing with them, it's just, there's a fucking creepiness factor there, people. There really is. And Ava goes, okay, I did everything you asked, one dance. And he sees that she's not wearing the wedding ring she was supposed to wear. And he goes, you fucking ruined it. And that's where he goes a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And Ava basically runs away from him, and she escapes to this barn. And in the barn, she discovers there's other undead in there. And he finds her, and he basically is telling her, like, they're docile enough when it started, but each day that passes, they get a little bit more and a little bit more aggressive. And he has them chained up in this barn. Very kind of reminiscent of Wes Craven's People Under the Stairs, kind of the same thing. You see, especially with the lighting, and you see the flashlight going, and you're looking through Ava's eyes, and you're seeing these undead chained to the wall. And I thought it was very effective and very good. And he's like, I'll keep my bargain, I'll take you there. And he's just completely gone over for the cuckoo puffs. Not to mention, not only does he have these undead in his barn, presumably his wife's family, he also has his wife who is dead, and she is pregnant. And he is telling Ava the reason why some of them don't come back is because the ones that come back are the ones that have unfinished business. And all she wanted to do was to be a mother, and the baby is still alive. You don't exactly know what he wants to do with Ava, but it has something to do with in his crazy mind, it has something to do with Ava and the baby. And Ava manages to kill him, but she leaves the zombie wife there. And you gotta remember, and we're circling, and I've heard some people say this is very predictable where our ending goes, because all throughout this movie, a very strong narrative has to do with childbirth. Ava and her husband have been trying to conceive a child, and it's not working. It's causing trouble in their marriage. And now she runs across this gentleman who his wife was gonna be a mother very shortly. And the reason she's not dead is because she wants to bring this baby into the world. Put a pin in that, kids. And it's very much circling around the themes of motherhood. And Ava gets away. She runs back into Clay. And there's some other poignant scenes. I don't want to give you guys a blow-by-blow of this whole movie, but there's some other poignant scenes. But again, where I think some people would have cons with this film is the pacing, because we have a long scene toward about this time in the movie where Ava is just walking, trying to get to that resort, that last little bit to the resort, and she's walking. And she does encounter a couple of zombies. And again, one thing I love about this is none of the zombies she encounters are the same. She runs into one, and he's the typical Romero zombie, chasing her and, trying to cause some sort of harm, very aggressive. But in another encounter with another zombie, she runs into, it was a family, and you see their motorhome. He's just burying his family in the dirt, and he doesn't try to lunge at her. He's not aggressive toward her, and he just looks at her with that same very powerful and haunted look and he doesn't speak because they can't, but his eyes manage to speak. Even though his flesh is cold and dead and his eyes and pupils aren't there anymore, his eyes still manage to speak. And he's just heartbroken because he's burying his family. And Ava helps him. And again, very powerful, very poignant. And then after she helps him bury his family, she kills him. But it's not out of aggression. It's not out of unkindness. In fact, it's a kindness. He's gone too. He's a zombie, and he wants to be back with his family. And then Ava manages to get to the hotel where her husband is at. And also, one thing that I haven't talked about that's a very big pro with me in this film is it's shot gorgeously. Cinematography in this film is just beautiful. Now, we're set in Australia, people, which is a beautiful country anyway, but the director of this film and everyone in it really manages to get some great money shots in this film, just for the landscape and the wildness and the beauty of Australia. It's just breathtaking. And you see shots of the ocean, you see all kinds of shots, and it also really puts you into not a post-apocalyptic world, but a world that has just been overnight plunged into devastation, and things are upside down, right side up. And she manages to make it to the hotel, and she finds her husband. And again, I don't want to go blow by blow what happens. He's not back online, but she still sits with him and has a dialogue. and you get a few revelations again about their marriage. And I'm not going to tell you guys what, but not everything was perfect in paradise. And she is having this dialogue with her husband, and we're very much, she's angry. This scene is definitely symbolic of anger, and she's going, you know, I'm right here, what do you want me to do? And another thing that has been through the whole movie is that while Ava was trying to get to her husband, she remembers another conversation, and she sees him, and he tells her just a little bit further. And that is the whole narrative of this film. Ava is just going a little bit further to get to the one you love, which anyone would do. And Clay comes back, and we get this shot. And this is one thing I will say, this shot with Clay, it's a nice scene, and it just shows that they have really become closer, not in a romantic way. You see that they've gone through an experience together, and it's forged them, and they are always going to be extremely close. And but it does run a little long, and this is the part where it does lag just a bit. And she makes her peace with her husband, and we get to the acceptance part. And Clay and Ava are just gonna go back to the real world. And on their journey, they pass by the bed and breakfast where the guy's family was. And she sees the woman, his wife, and she's standing in the road, and again, she's not aggressive with them. And all of a sudden, you hear the baby cry, and the baby that she's given birth to, and Ava immediately breaks and starts running toward the crying, and she sees the baby, and it is not a zombified baby, it is just a regular baby, and we're going full circle. And this is one thing you don't often hear me talk about on this channel. We leave on a rather hopeful note. And usually I am a Debbie Downer. I love depressing and dark endings because this will make me sound like a fucking jackass, but I feel that that's often more true. Life doesn't always give us happy endings. And I've had this argument with some people. Some people go, yeah, that's why we watch films, to find happy endings, Jen. And I get that, and I appreciate that. But for me, I like a little realism in my films, and so I usually will prefer a darker ending because I think that's a little closer to real life. And this is one of the few movies that ends on such a super optimistic ending, but I think it's deserved because, again, we're going through the allegories of grief, and what a good note to end on, because basically the one thing, like the movie said just a little bit further, if you hold on, because we all have horrible shit that happens to us, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a death, guys. It can be, like I said, a job loss, a relationship lost. Oh, I don't know, say your YouTube channel got fucking hacked. I'm gonna quit beating this dead horse one of these days, guys. I promise. I just need to work through the anger just a little bit more. But, we all have shitty things happen to us. But, you know what? If you hold on, something good will eventually come around the corner. It's just the law of average. As there was a line in the movie The Crow that says it can't rain all the time, and I think that this is a beautiful way to end it. That if you hold on, you might get dealt a really lousy hand, but if you hold on and play the hand, you might get something that you're not expecting, but something good will come out of something bad. I have to believe that. That's why I say this movie is perfect for January, because it's giving us an optimistic and hopeful note. And some people say that it's a little bit too predictable, and a lot of people don't like the ending, but this is one of the few times you'll hear me say I really appreciated this uplifting ending, because she lost her husband, and it doesn't necessarily show that she has any romantic feelings toward Clay. They have a very beautiful bond, but it's not necessarily a romantic one. But she is getting something else. She lost something, but she's going to gain something through this child. And you just gotta hold on, guys. And if anyone out there is going through stuff, and it doesn't have to be, like I said, super catastrophic, but if you've hit some bumps in your road, just remind yourself, you just gotta go a little bit further, and eventually you're gonna stumble on to something good. And I hope it happens sooner rather than later. Overall, I give We Bury the Dead an A-. It's not a perfect film, and there is some issues with pacing, and it is a bit melancholy, which some people do not like. There are places in this movie that are very melancholy, but at the same time, we leave on such a beautiful and powerful ending, especially going with the allegory of grief. It just pairs it really well, and this is another zombie film that is going to go into some of my favorites. As you guys know, Die Alone from 2024 is one that I absolutely loved. Here Alone was another one, and I can put this movie in with those. And I don't love it as much as Die Alone, but I do really love that it left me with an optimistic and hopeful heart. And like I said, usually I hate that fucking shit, but this time it worked. So for that reason alone, it really stands high. I don't think it's going to be my favorite film of the year, but it's a good film for January. This is a film that when we get to December next year, I will remember this one, and I probably will be at the very least an honorable mention. It's an unforgettable film, but it will not be for everyone, so definitely know your taste. And I think that is all I have to say about We Buried the Dead. Check this one out if anything I've said sounds interesting, but if it sounds like a snooze fest, you might want to pass on it. Again, this will not be for everyone, but I think for some of us who are looking for hope, you could do a lot worse. And at this point, I'll say what I always say. I love you guys. I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And in the meantime, keep watching and talking horror. Happy 2026, guys. Bye.